Welcome to our Light and Darkness reading for today. Chapter 6, The Singers. Prior had hoped for a chance to talk to his friend Bonson after the council, but Bonson immediately left the room, walking so fast that it would have been difficult to catch him even if Prior had felt it appropriate to leave Alva's side. Lord Benel also left. Though in less of a hurry, like Prior, he wanted a word with his son and hoped he had gone to their house in Grenvere. All the wealthier lords had houses in Grenvere as well as Fanata to stay in when they visited old or new capitals. Unfortunately for Benel, his son was not there when he arrived at his house. Not long after he got home, a messenger came by to tell him that Lord Philon would have a banquet for the lords that evening, though King Tyagon would not attend because he wanted to be alone with his thoughts. As for Lord Bonson, if anyone had been watching him during Hope's short speech, they would have seen that he began to weep silently and to shake. Luckily for him, all eyes were on Hope. After the meeting, he went directly to the stables, and a servant saddled his magnificent brown horse. His horse's name was Leshin, which in the Huron tongue means lance. As we have said, Leshin was one of the few things Bonson loved. He galloped on Leshin to a cluster of small green hills about 2 hours' ride from Grenvere. He rode to the top of one of the higher hills with a single tree at the top. He took off Leshin's saddle and bridle so that he could graze freely, then sat under the tree to think. His mind was swirling, and he hoped to find some clarity. Benel had no idea where his son might have gone, but hoped that he would show up at the banquet. The council had showed that he had made a fatal error. He had assumed that Lord Hellel had taken his son along on some sort of trip for historical research. If he had taken the time to ask Bonson about his journey, he would have known critical information ahead of time, and thus been able to sway the outcome more effectively. As it was, he knew his son could still be a powerful force in helping to avert the impending disaster, and he wanted to plan with him how to handle the next day's situation, difficult though it may prove. Grenvere had a splendid banqueting hall. This was an exciting night for Hope. She had never been to a banquet, and this was the first time she and Alva would appear together in public as a couple. Hellel said there was no longer any point in keeping Hope's identity secret. She had been revealed before the lords already. If any Dachmanim tried to attack her, she would have to face them eventually anyway. If any other force came after her, Alva, Hellel, Pensor, Prior, Jagrok, Tombus, and Nera were all present. If anyone wished to assassinate her, they would need to bring an army. Alva's company was given a place of honor at the banquet. Many lords and their ladies greeted both Alva and Hope. Alva was continually congratulated for his fine display of swordsmanship earlier that day, and many of the nobles expressed their happiness to Hope that a daughter of Burgon and Lorraine was alive, and told her how much they loved and respected her parents. There were a few Huron lords who felt some hostility towards Alva as the son of Alsaladane. They had lost family members in the war and harbored ill feelings, but they kept this to themselves. Many of the Huron lords were quite angry with Teraphon the Wise for being willing to surrender the empire to Dachman without a fight. Whatever its faults, Huron had a long and illustrious military tradition. If the son of Diaphon the Conqueror would not stand against Dachman, these lords reasoned, then why not the son of Alsaladane? Most of the Lassanian lords were quite happy about Alva's appearance. Though they had followed the decision of Philon III and adapted themselves to the new kingdom, many of them had maintained a secret pride in the Danaes, and were very sorry that they no longer defended the kingdom. To see the son of Alcala-Danae the 26th appear and defeat Huron's greatest swordsman filled them with a nationalistic pride the older men had not felt for some time, and the younger men had only heard about from their fathers. There was a beautiful meal, lovely salad made with the finest vegetables in the kingdom, roast goose with roasted potatoes for the main course, and fluffy, cream-filled pastries for dessert. With dinner they also served a fine red wine. Hope had seldom drunk wine before, and Alva had to warn her not to have more than one glass. "You would make inebriation look beautiful," he told her, "but I'm not sure that's the message we want to send just now." When dinner was over, Philon's minstrels came in to play and sing. The music was beautiful and everyone enjoyed themselves. Hope had never heard such beautiful female voices, besides her own, of course, and she took special pleasure in the tall, beautiful ladies with their various tones. She was not alone. Prior noticed one particularly tall, particularly beautiful, and particularly talented blonde woman with green eyes of the same shade as his. He could not take his eyes off of her. When they had finished singing, and as soon as he could catch her eye, he gave her his most charming smile. The look she returned was not what he had hoped for. Alva noticed this, and took it upon himself to make a request to Philon. "My lord," he said, "my tall companion is called Prior the Mighty. He is a famous warrior, but it is not well known that he is a fine musician. With your permission, may he sing a song for us?" Philon assented, and Prior rose and walked to the platform as the minstrels made way. It was almost comical to see how gigantic he was, standing before all the lords and ladies on the platform. But he was at ease. He was Prior the Mighty. He knew himself and he knew his talents. Besides, he had spent months working on a song that he was happy to present to the Lacinian nobility. "This is a song I just finished writing," he said. "I sing it in honor of my master and mistress, who are also my friends, Lord Alva Danae and Lady Hope the Luminary." With this he began to sing in his deep, beautiful voice. It was a song that told the story of Alva and Hope as he had witnessed it, their meeting and the stealthy development of their love. He left out any references to Nera, and especially Bonson, of course, but the song told the story in a picturesque way that was both funny and beautiful. He brought out Hope's shyness and Alva's long-time obliviousness, making all the listeners laugh. He sang of Alva's courageous exploits in a way that put them on the edge of their seats, especially his portrayal of the duel with Glandair. The climactic point was his description of the Battle of the Dry Lake, culminating with Hope's shining return to save all their lives. The last verse was about Alva's awakening and their engagement. He had a lovely description of the beam of light he had seen shining through the window and Lassa Creston, and the joy he felt knowing what it meant. When he had finished, there were tears in every eye. The eyes of the tall, beautiful singer were now fixed immovably on Prior. Never had she heard a man sing like this, and she had spent many season changes in the company of the best male voices in the kingdom. When Prior had finished, there was thunderous applause. "Thank you," he said, "and now I'm going to make a bold request. I beg my Lord Philon that Lady Hope might be allowed to sing a song for us. That is, of course, if she's willing." "Should my niece be willing, I would also beg her to sing for us," Philon said. He had never seen his niece before this day. He shared the captivation of all, but for him it was also mixed with family pride. Hope blushed slightly with embarrassment, but this added greatly to her charm. In her nervousness she did not think to walk to the platform, but stood where she was and began to sing in the High Lacinian. She sang a song about the kingdom of Lacinia. She sang of the trees, the river, the sun, and the stars. All the lords and ladies were transfigured. Their heads were full of beautiful visions. As she sang, the lords were struck with a new understanding. Whatever might happen, they could not let the light kingdom fall under darkness. The only person present who was not having a good night was Ben-El. He was distressed about where his son might be. He was also concerned about the singing of prayer and hope. He could see how it was affecting the lords, and he was afraid the kingdom was falling into what he considered to be Hillel's dangerous grasp. The banquet had begun at 5 o'clock, so it would not run too late. Philon wanted to give the lords plenty of time to rest before the meeting at dawn. At 9 o'clock, the banquet subsided, and the lords and ladies went to their various residences in the city. We must now return to Lord Bonson. He had stayed atop his hill the entire evening, while the rest of the lords were banqueting. His mind was full, and his heart was hurting. Since he had seen Hope last, the intense pain he had felt over failing to win her love had become a dull ache. Seeing her again ripped the scab off his wound. He had been distracted by his duel with Alva, and then by the things Alva had said afterward, but when Hope had spoken again, his pain returned and intensified. He loved her. No matter how he tried, he loved her. He knew he had loved her selfishly, but he had loved her. And she would never love any man but Alva. How could she? Why would she? "Why can't I let it go?" he shouted, tearing at his hair. There was no one to answer. Then there was Alva. He would have thought that losing a duel with Alva would be the end of his life, but the loss didn't seem to bother him. Alva's swordsmanship was simply too great. Alva may have won by a lucky chance, but a win was a win, and no one had ever won against Bonson. He hated Alva for taking hope from him, but he could not help admiring his greatness as a warrior. Then there were his words. In the times when Bonson's father had not been away for his diplomatic work, Bonson had heard him speak often at the dinner table. He perpetually talked about his dealings in the Empire. Something had always seemed wrong to his son. Everything was negotiation and manipulation. He always talked about how to use the situation to the greatest advantage, or at least how to minimize any possible losses for himself, his family, and the nobility in general. Bonson had always had a vague notion of how he thought things should be done, and a vague idea that there was something wrong with the way his father did them. For Alva, the only real question had to do with what is right and wrong. Power and strength were tools for doing right and resisting evil. How could he hate Alva Denay when he represented everything he wanted to believe in? How could he believe in Alva Denay when he hated him so? As Bonson strove with these questions, he heard, or at least felt, Hope singing in the city. He covered his ears and screamed at the top of his lungs, but he could not drown out her voice. What was he to do? He felt totally lost. How could he go on? Suddenly he heard a voice in his head which began to say the same thing over and over. "Perhaps, Lord Bonson, it is time that you stop living for yourself. Perhaps it is time to learn to live for the hope of others." Chapter 7. The Only Man. It was late when Lord Bonson entered his father's house in Grenvere, but Lord Ben-El was waiting for him. "I was sorry not to see you at the banquet," he said as his son entered the front door. He noticed that Bonson looked quite disheveled. "I had not heard about any banquet," Bonson responded, "but I wasn't in the banqueting mood." "So I gathered," Ben-El replied. "I'm sorry I got you mixed up in that duel today, son." "Why are you sorry?" That is the best thing you've ever done for me. I've been waiting for a chance to face Alva Dene for many months. I was very grateful when you gave me one. Well, thank you for not being angry. I didn't think it was possible for him to defeat you. The man does have some talents. I made a mistake in underestimating him. There's no need to call it a mistake, Father. It's done now, and I know what I wanted to know. I would have thought I would be more upset about being defeated, but I fought well, almost perfectly. It was a great duel, and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad, son, but there was more going on than your personal rivalry. It was a mistake because I intended to remove credibility from this Alva, but instead I gave it to him. I thought you would dispatch him and all would know that the real warrior to follow was Bonson, not Alva. Then we could have put Hellel's little scheme to bed. Hellel's little scheme, Bonson repeated to himself with an ironic smile. You really should have told me about what happened on your journey with Hellel, son. I offered to tell you, but you had important things to see to. You should have made me listen. As it was, I was unprepared for what we faced in the council today. I should have made you. Yes. I don't know that you have ever listened to me in my life, Father, Bonson replied. So why not turn over a new leaf tonight? We will listen to one another and understand one another. What specifically is it that bothers you about what Hellel, Alva Dene, and his lady said today? They want to rashly drag the kingdom into a treasonous war that cannot be won. I wish to stop this, but I need your help, son. One lost duel will not destroy your credibility, especially when, as you said, you fought so well. You are still the pride of the Twin Kingdoms. I have faced one of the Dachmanim, Father. They are pure evil. I have met a Dachmonian ambassador, son, and I like them no better than you, but we cannot defeat them by force. We must salvage what we can for our house and try to do what good may be done under their rule. If we negotiate properly, we might be able to keep our lordship. If we fight, we'll all be slaves. Is that what Diaphon the Conqueror would have thought? Diaphon is not here, son, but Teraphon sees the wisdom of this. I simply cannot believe that we should surrender innocent people to the rule of Dachman, Father. I've seen the eyes of one of their dark warriors. He entered my thoughts and filled me with terror. I know that what Lady Nira said today is true. All will be darkness under their rule. If that is so, our goal must be survival rather than extinction, which is what Hellel is leading us toward. And if Alva Dene and his lady can withstand Dachman? Don't be a fool. We can't defeat the might of Dachman and Hurin with one man who has a name, a sword, and a little glow-in-the-dark girl. Don't you ever speak lightly about her, Father, Bonson shouted, his eyes flashing with anger. Are you going to challenge me to a duel? Bidel said sarcastically. You underestimated Alva Dene. Don't make the same mistake with me, Papa. Ha 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 ha! Benel laughed at his son. Patricide would be a nice crown jewel for Hellel's madness, wouldn't it? I love the way you are the one who wants to serve up Lacinia to Dachman on a silver platter, but you make Hellel the villain. It's clever, Father. You are very good at what you do. Let us understand one another, as you said, Benel said. It's clear to anyone that you want that girl. Help me salvage what we can of the kingdom, and I will find a way to make her your wife." Now it was Bonsan's turn to laugh, sounding almost exactly as his father had a few minutes earlier. "So, if I help you convince the lords not to fight, you are going to steal Alva Dene's fiancée for me. I look forward to seeing you take her from him, Father. How exactly are you going to accomplish that?" "There are ways besides fighting, son. Leave it to me." "Are Huron lords taking wives by force now? Is that who we are?" "I didn't mean marry her by force. If we make marrying Alva Dene an impossibility, then you can win her love. She need not know what part you played in the affair." "And you think I would want her on those terms?" "What terms do you want? To simply accept defeat? Are you going to slink around looking for corners to weep in like a little girl while another man claims what should rightfully be yours? Is that who you are?" Bonsan was so overcome with rage that he did not answer. He turned from his father and walked out the front door, not bothering to close it behind him. With his anger boiling over, he walked as fast as his long legs would carry him. He knew where he was going. Alva would be staying at Hellel's house in Grenvere, and he would find him there. Hellel's house was on the other side of the city, but Bonsan reached it very quickly with his great stride. Jagrock and Tombus were standing guard at the front door, but they did not stop him. Hellel had a list of those who could be admitted freely, and Lord Bonsan was on it. Both men nodded in greeting to him, but he was too focused on his purpose to notice them. After the banquet, Hellel and his guests had sat for some time talking, discussing the day's events. When Bonsan arrived, it was late. Hope and Mira had gone to bed already, but Alva, Hellel, Pensor, and Prior were still sitting up, talking. Bonsan burst through the front door and saw the 4 men seated across the room. There was a fireplace on that side of the large room, but it was not lit. The men talked by candlelight, sitting in a semicircle facing the front door, as if they were prepared for someone to come through. Alva and Hellel were in the middle, with Alva on the right and Hellel on the left. Pensor sat to Alva's right and Prior to Hellel's left. The room was wide and round, with a smoothly carved stone floor of dark brown. When they saw Bonsan burst in with his wild appearance, they all immediately went silent. Bonsan walked forward powerfully and stood right in front of Alva. Like lightning, he drew his mighty, gold-hilted sword. Alva did not move, and the others followed his lead. They knew that Bonsan would not attack him if Alva had not yet drawn his sword. With all his might, Bonsan threw his great sword at Alva's feet. The hilt chipped the stone floor, and several jewels were dislodged from it, which rolled away with a clinking sound. Bonsan shouted, "Your victory is complete, Alva Dene! You are the only man I can follow!" Then in a calmer voice he said, "At the dry lake, you told us you had an old man in your service." He nodded at Pensor. Then he kneeled before Alva, lowered his head, and said, "Now you have a young man in your service. What oath would you take?" "Nothing beyond what you've already given," Alva replied. "But if you mean this, then I will ask the most difficult thing I can from you." "Name it," Bonsan said. "Rise and embrace me as my brother," Alva said. Alva had spoken truly. This was the most difficult command he could give. Bonsan rose, and the 2 men embraced as brothers, much to the joy of their 3 friends who were present. I'm glad you came, Alva said. We need you.